Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. I never imagined that one sentence would destroy everything I believed about love, loyalty, and marriage. Yet, that's exactly what happened one quiet Friday evening when my wife, Emily, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "It's just going to be one night with him. He's always been my dream man, and I just need to know what it feels like." At first, I thought she was joking. Emily wasn't the type to say things like that. She was gentle, calm, and thoughtful, or at least I believed she was. We'd been married for 8 years, built a home together, and gone through the struggles every couple faces. Sure, we had our disagreements, but nothing that ever made me think she was capable of betrayal. I remember the way her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed guilt. The words echoed in my head, looping endlessly, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I stood there, frozen. "Emily, what are you saying?" I asked quietly, my voice breaking halfway through. She sighed, her shoulders slumping as if a heavy weight had just been lifted. "I've thought about this for a long time," she said. "It's not about you. You've been good to me. You've been everything I could ask for. But he's the one person I've always wondered about. It's just one night. Then I'll come back, and everything will go back to normal." Those words, "everything will go back to normal," felt like a cruel joke. How could anything go back to normal after something like that? I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could even think of doing this. But instead, I just stood there, tried to understand what had happened to the woman I married. "Who is he?" I finally asked, barely above a whisper. Her eyes darted away. "You don't know him?" "Someone from college," she said. "We reconnected online a few months ago. It's stupid, I know, but I can't get him out of my head. I just need to get this out of my system." It was like she was describing an impulse purchase or a bad habit she needed to indulge once before moving on. But this wasn't some trivial thing. This was our marriage, our bond, our vows. I felt my throat tighten. And what if it's not just one night? What if he doesn't want to stop? What if you don't? She looked up at me, tears pooling in her eyes. "It's not like that. I love you, James. I do. I just need closure. I need to feel what I missed before we got married." Closure. That word stung deeper than anything else. Closure with another man, while she was still my wife. I didn't know what to do. Every emotion fought for space inside me. Anger, heartbreak, confusion, disbelief. The room felt too small, the air too heavy. I wanted to walk away, but my legs wouldn't move. I kept hoping she'd laugh and say she didn't mean it, but she didn't. She just stood there, waiting for me to say something that would make her decision easier. Finally, I said, "If you walk out that door, Emily, you're not just leaving for one night. You're leaving everything we built together." Her lip trembled. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm sorry." Then she turned around, grabbed her small overnight bag, and walked out. I didn't chase her. I didn't beg. I just watched as the woman I loved more than anything in the world walked away to spend the night with someone else. When the door clicked shut, silence filled the room. A kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the world had stopped breathing. I sat down on the couch and stared at the empty spot where her bag had been. The clock ticked loudly, mocking me. Each second reminded me that my wife was with another man, doing things that were supposed to belong only to us. I thought of all the nights we stayed up talking about our dreams, our plans, our future children. All of it now felt meaningless. I wanted to hate her, but all I could do was ache for the woman I thought she was. Hours passed. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just waited, even though I didn't know what I was waiting for. Maybe for her to call. Maybe for her to come home and realize the mistake she'd made. At around 4 a.m., I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My heart jumped, but I stayed still. A few seconds later, the front door opened quietly, and Emily stepped inside. She looked exhausted, her makeup smudged, her hair messy, her eyes red from crying. She closed the door softly, as if trying not to wake me, not realizing I'd been awake all night. When she saw me sitting there in the dark, her breath caught. "James, you're still up?" I nodded slowly. "Couldn't sleep," I said, my voice flat. She put her bag down and started crying. "It's over. It's done. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." I didn't respond. I just looked at her, trying to find the woman I once knew in her tear-streaked face. After a long pause, she whispered, "Can we please forget this ever happened? I just want things to go back to how they were." I almost laughed, but no sound came out. How do you erase something like that? How do you look at your wife and not see her in someone else's arms? "I don't think that's possible," I finally said. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I made a mistake, James. I thought I needed to get something out of my system. But I didn't. I just feel empty. Please don't hate me." I wanted to believe she was sorry. I wanted to hold her, to comfort her, to tell her we could find a way through it. But every time I looked at her, I saw the image of her with him. "I don't hate you," I said quietly, "but I don't know who you are anymore." That night, I slept in the guest room. The bed felt strange, the air colder than usual. I could hear her crying softly through the walls, and even though I felt shattered, a small part of me still cared. Over the next few days, we barely spoke. She tried to make things normal, cooking breakfast, cleaning, asking about my day, but the silence between us was heavier than any argument could be. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want people to see the cracks in our marriage. I told myself I needed time, to think, to heal, to decide what to do next. But every time I saw her, I wondered what she was thinking when she was with him. Did she compare us? Did she regret it halfway through? Did she think of me at all? These questions ate at me day and night. One evening, I went for a long drive. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to escape the house that now felt haunted by betrayal. I parked by the lake, where we used to sit during our early years of marriage. The reflection of the moon on the water reminded me of simpler times, when love was enough, when we still trusted each other. I sat there for hours, thinking about how one night had rewritten the story of my life. I didn't know what I would do next. Leave her? Forgive her? Pretend it never happened? None of it seemed right. But deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. As I drove home, I realized something painful yet true. Sometimes, it's not the betrayal itself that destroys you, but the way it makes you question everything you believed about love. And that's what hurt the most. The days that followed felt unreal. I was living with the same woman, yet it felt like sharing a home with a stranger. Every corner of the house carried echoes of what she'd done. The couch where we'd once watched movies, the kitchen where we shared quiet breakfasts. Everything felt tainted. Emily tried to act normal. She cooked dinner, left me notes before work, and smiled as if pretending could erase the truth, but I couldn't unsee it. Every time I looked at her, I remembered the night she walked out to be with another man, her so-called dream man. I started spending more time outside. Long walks after work, sitting in the car before going inside, pretending to be busy. I wasn't avoiding her because I hated her. I was avoiding her because being near her reminded me of everything I'd lost inside myself. One evening, after another silent dinner, she finally spoke. "James," she said softly, "are you ever going to talk to me again?" I put my fork down and met her eyes. "What do you want me to say, Emily?" "I want you to tell me if there's still hope for us," she whispered. "I'll do anything to fix this." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw the woman I used to love, the one who used to run to me after a long day, who believed in us. But then reality came rushing back. "Do you even understand what you did?" I asked quietly. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice." Tears streamed down her face. "I know, and I regret it every second. I thought I was missing something, but the truth is, I had everything and I ruined it." She reached across the table to touch my hand, but I pulled away. I didn't do it to hurt her. It was just instinct. I couldn't handle her touch. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the living room alone. My thoughts were a storm. I wanted to forgive her. I really did. But forgiveness wasn't something I could just decide on. It had to come naturally, and I was nowhere near that point. The next morning, I took a few days off work. I packed a small bag and told her I needed space. "Please don't go," she begged, standing in the doorway with tears in her eyes. "I have to," I said. "If I stay here, I'll just keep hating you. And I don't want that." I left without another word. I drove for hours until I reached a small coastal town we used to visit early in our marriage. I rented a tiny cabin near the water. The sound of the waves was calming, almost like they were washing away my thoughts, one by one. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. Over the next few days, I tried to reconnect with myself. I went on long walks by the beach, watched the sunrise, and sat by the shore at night listening to the waves crash. I realized how much of my identity had been wrapped around Emily, around being her husband, her protector, her support. Now, without that, I didn't know who I was. One evening, as I sat watching the sunset, a local fisherman named Carl struck up a conversation. He was in his late 50s, with weathered skin and kind eyes. We talked about everything: life, work, love. I didn't tell him my full story, just enough for him to understand I was going through something painful. He looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "Son, sometimes people confuse closure with curiosity. They go looking for what they think they missed, but all they find is emptiness. You can't control what she did, but you can control how long you let her actions define your peace." His words hit me hard. For the first time, I stopped replaying that night in my head. Instead, I started thinking about what kind of life I wanted moving forward. After a week, I decided to go back home, not to return to the same routine, but to face the truth. When I arrived, Emily was waiting by the door. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "James, I didn't think you'd come back," she said, running toward me. I didn't push her away this time, but I didn't embrace her either. I just stood there, calm and distant. "I came back to talk," I said, not to pretend nothing happened. She nodded quickly, wiping her tears. "I understand. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it." We sat down in the living room. The silence stretched between us until I finally spoke. "I've thought about us, about what happened, and I realized something. You didn't just cheat on me physically. You broke something inside me that I don't know how to repair. But I also realized I can't carry this bitterness forever. It's eating me alive." She listened quietly, her hands trembling. "I can't promise we'll ever be what we were," I continued. "But I can try to forgive you someday. Not for your sake, but for mine." Her tears flowed freely. "I'll wait as long as it takes," she whispered. I nodded. "You'll have to prove it, not with words, but with time." That night, I slept in our room for the first time since it all happened. We didn't touch or speak. We just existed in the same space. Two broken people trying to find their way back from the edge. Weeks passed. We started going to couples therapy. Some sessions were painful. I had to listen to her explain what led her to that decision, and it tore me apart all over again. But slowly, I began to understand her, not to justify her actions, but to see the pain and confusion that lived inside her long before that night. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. It came slowly, like the sun rising after a long, cold night. One morning, I woke up and realized I wasn't angry anymore. The hurt was still there, but the anger had faded. And with that, something shifted inside me. Emily noticed it too. She became more open, more gentle. She didn't hide behind excuses or empty promises anymore. Instead, she faced the consequences every single day with patience and honesty. It took months, but little by little, the walls between us started to crumble. We began to talk again, really talk. We laughed sometimes, cautiously, like people relearning how to live. But deep down, I knew our relationship would never return to what it once was. It would either become stronger, rebuilt from truth, or it would quietly fade into something unrecognizable. One evening, she sat beside me on the couch and said, "I know I can never undo what I did, but thank you for not giving up on me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a woman who had lost herself and was slowly finding her way back. "I didn't do it for you," I said softly. "I did it because I didn't want to become someone bitter and hollow. I needed to heal." She nodded, understanding completely. That night, for the first time in a long time, we held hands while falling asleep. It wasn't romantic or passionate. It was simply human, fragile, and real. Months later, I learned to love myself again. I focused on things I neglected, my friends, my hobbies, my peace. I realized that love isn't just about staying. It's about choosing every day to keep showing up even when it hurts. Some nights, I still thought about what happened. The pain never fully disappeared, but it no longer controlled me. I stopped being a victim of her choice. Instead, I became the author of my own healing. And in that journey, something beautiful happened. I began to see Emily not as the woman who betrayed me, but as the woman who taught me the hardest lesson of all, that love is not possession, but courage. We didn't become perfect. We still had our scars, our reminders of what almost destroyed us. But those scars also reminded us of what we survived. One afternoon, we stood by the same lake where I once sat alone, lost and broken. She looked at me with quiet tears and said, "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the forgiveness you gave me." I smiled faintly. "Then let's stop living in the past," I said. "Let's build something new." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. The betrayal had nearly ended me, but it also forced me to grow, to understand that pain can be the soil where strength begins to bloom. Emily and I would never forget that night, but we didn't have to let it define us forever. In the end, it wasn't about what she did. It was about what I chose to do after. And I chose to rise.